going to turn over to our first set of speakers from the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. We have with us today Diana Ponce de Leon, who's the Director of the Invest in Neighborhoods Division, Larry McClendon, the Bayview Project Manager and Invest in Neighborhoods Project Manager, and Manish Goyal, who is Business Development Manager. So welcome, Diana, Larry, and Manish.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I think I will get us started. Diana Ponce de Leon, Director of Invest in Neighborhoods. And thank you so much, Assessor Torres, for that great introduction and the overview of all the work that the city really has been doing and that we've been working on together, not only with the small businesses here, but also with all of our partners citywide that are helping us get through this recovery, get to the recovery, and make sure that our services reach those that most need it. So thank you for that introduction. So with that, I did want to make very brief comments, more an overview and an introduction to what we do as the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, how you can access us and some of our services. This slide presentation will really be more of a resource guide that will then be posted as a PDF document, because really I wanted to give more of the time and opportunity both for the question and answer session, but also for a very important topic that is on the minds of many of our small businesses, which is the commercial eviction moratorium expiration. And so I really wanted to support and dedicating most of the time for that topic, as well as your questions and answers. So as you bear with me, I will go over a few slides, but again, this will be a presentation that is meant as a resource that you will have links and options to then look at, to follow up on some of the topics that I share with you today on the resources. So with that, if we can go to slide 3, please. Next slide. Great, thank you. So the Office of Economic and Workforce Development is made up of 7 divisions, of which it includes the Office of Small Business, Film, Workforce, obviously a very big part of our department, as well as Economic Development. And so we support small businesses, we support different sectors of both jobs as well as sectors of business, such as manufacturers, the film industry, the small corridor businesses, restaurants, etc. So we provide and develop programs as well as get resources out, provide technical assistance, and provide grants to our partners that conduct that work. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, some of the resources that we do provide range from direct grants. So those relief dollars, over 63 million, our division as Invest in Neighborhoods was dedicated to figuring out how do we get the funding out, what programs do we develop, how do we create the processes to small businesses so that they could access those funds and get them into your hands as soon as it became available to us to do so. Additionally, the loans that you all may have seen as announcements that came out, those are all coming out of our team and working closely, very closely with our partners. And when I say partners, I mean there's lots of nonprofit organizations that focus on economic development citywide. We could absolutely not do the work that we do without them. And that includes, again, free experts in different arenas, such as marketing, such as finance, such as accounting, that they can provide the workshops that come to supporting your business, no matter, if you're launching or if you are growing or expanding, or if you need help. And so they provide citywide, depending on your sector, depending on where you're located, many areas of service and for small businesses and resources. Also, we work with small businesses to form working groups, and so that they can learn from each other, through workshops, through cohorts. And so that is a model that we also implement through some of our programs. Next slide, please. So here's just a sampling of some of the organizations that we partner with to provide those services, everything from loans, capital, technical assistance, again, and sector expertise. If we can go to slide 11, please, as my last concluding slide. And again, I want to emphasize that in this slide deck, we included a whole bunch of resources that will be made available to you all. But again, I wanted to dedicate most of the time to our partner that will be speaking next. Next slide. Next, right there. Here we go. So, most of our resources can be located on our website, oewd.org. There, if you go to the COVID banner, you will be able to see that there's resources for small businesses, for employers, and for workers. So definitely, I urge you to explore that. You will also see what resources are available currently right now, what resources have been in the past. So it'll help you navigate through that, what is currently available. In addition, when you go to our website, a banner will automatically pop up asking you to register for our newsletter. I really urge you to do that. That's where we send newsletters on a regular basis to let businesses know what is new, what do we have going on, and alerting you to any new resources that we may have. And with that, I am happy to introduce the next panelist, which is the SF Bar Association and my colleague, Manish Goyal, which will focus on speaking in regards to the commercial eviction moratorium. So this is an example, again, of our office funding and working together with a great organization to support an area of need that we see in the city with small businesses, which is around legal services, negotiating leases, and mediation between landlords at this time. And so with that, I want to go ahead. I don't know, Manish, if you're going to be speaking first and introducing our partner, the SF Bar Association, but the floor is yours. Thank you all.
Thank you, Diana, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Manish Goyal, and I'm with the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. I also will be brief because I think it's very important for this audience to hear from our partners at the Bar Association of San Francisco's Conflict Intervention Service. But I did want to provide some updates on the commercial eviction moratorium. And for folks that are not familiar with the moratorium, as well as the Commercial Eviction Protections Ordinance, these were resources that were developed over the course of the pandemic that provided resources for countless businesses who are struggling to meet their rent obligations. And this provided them some relief to really operate without fear of facing an eviction because of non-payment of rent. So I wanted to first let the audience know that beginning on September 30th, 2021, the commercial eviction moratorium expired. And so what does this mean for your business? If you were relying on the commercial eviction moratorium because you had difficulty paying your rent due to the financial impacts of COVID-19, you must begin paying your current rent obligations. However, under the, and actually, I apologize, hold on one second. I'm having a quick technical difficulty. I apologize. I apologize for that. My video went off. So I will just be speaking from here on out. So, unfortunately, with the expiration of the commercial eviction moratorium, businesses that weren't paying rent over the course of the pandemic will now have to pay their October rent obligation and future rent obligations. But don't worry, because under the Commercial Eviction Protections Ordinance, some businesses may have additional time to repay any rent that they owed that was owed between March 16th, 2020 to September 30th, 2021. So for example, if a business had fewer than 10 employees, you would have until September 30th, 2023 to repay any of your missed rent. For businesses that had employees between 10 and 24, you have until March 30th, 2023. For businesses with 25 to 49 employees, you have until September 30th, 2022 to repay any missed rent. And beginning on October 24th, if your business had between 50 and 99 employees, you would have until March 30th of 2022 to repay any missed rent. And businesses with 100 or more employees do not have any additional time to repay this missed rent. Second, the ordinance provides additional support for certain businesses to be excused from paying rent during any time period between March 16th, 2020 and September 30th, 2021, where the business was required to fully shut down due to COVID-19. Here, this rule, there's a new rule that creates a rebuttable presumption for businesses. And this presumes that a legally required shutdown due to COVID-19 creates a situation that made it impossible for a covered commercial tenant to perform on its lease, or it frustrated the purpose of the business's lease. So for more information on this provision, I would encourage you to visit our website at www.oewd.org/eviction help. And on that website, we're going to be providing further guidance on this provision in the coming weeks. And so please check back for updates. And last, on September 28th, the Board of Supervisors did pass a piece of legislation to create a COVID-19 commercial rent relief fund, which would provide financial support to landlords of certain businesses that were unable to pay rent due to COVID-19. Right now, this piece of legislation is at the mayor's office. And so for updates on this fund, please check back on our website. One thing I did want to just mention again is, as we kind of go through the next phase of the pandemic and with the expiration of the moratorium, it's important to really reach out to our office and know that we are here to help you. And through our partnership with the Bar Association of San Francisco, really, I think we're here to let you know to take a breath, to understand that you're not in this alone. And by reaching out to our partners at the Bar Association, as well as our other legal service provider nonprofit, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, know that you have help in looking at your leases and really understanding how to navigate a repayment plan with your landlord. And I'll leave it at that. I did think it's really important to turn it over to the bar. Nicole, I don't know if I should turn it over to you first or turn it over to Carol and Roger. But thank you so much.
Thanks, Manish. And sure, I'm happy to do just a quick introduction so that we know who we're hearing from at the Bar Association. And first off, just really appreciate your remarks and Deanna's remarks. And thank you so much for everything you've been doing throughout this pandemic to support our small business community. So now I'm going to introduce two speakers from the Bar Association of San Francisco. So first we have Carol Kahn. She's the Director of Public Service Programs at the Bar Association. Carol is joined today by Roger Moss, the Supervising Mediation Counsel for the Bar's Conflict Intervention Service. So please welcome to our virtual stage, Carol and Roger.
Thank you so much, Nicole and Manish and Deanna as well, and Assessor Joaquin Torres. It's really a pleasure to have an audience with you today. I am the Director of Public Service Programs at the Bar Association of San Francisco, and I oversee the Conflict Intervention Service, which we are grateful to have received funding through the Office of Economic and Workforce Development to be able to execute some services that I think are really have become more critical in our post-COVID, or our path to recovery, I should say, era. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the various services and components that constitute what we do in the Conflict Intervention Service, which also has a path to a 2-hour free legal consultation for lease review. And I'll explain that, and then we'd be happy to also help answer some questions. Next slide. So the Conflict Intervention Service, in fact, was born in the residential sector to mediate conflict between landlords and tenants. And in 2020, basically late 2020, we learned we would be funded to do the same kind of work to help de-escalate and otherwise mediate conflict between commercial tenants and landlords. So the component basically is that we assist in a range of dispute resolution services for which we have professional neutrals at the ready who are highly experienced with backgrounds as attorneys, as real estate brokers, as folks who understand the commercial real estate leasing environment, none other than my colleague Roger Moss, who's quite expert in all this as well and helps lead that team. We have everything from advisory and intervention services that include conflict coaching or communication coaching, as well as conducting a business analysis related to rent and the sustainability of a business. We have expertise in-house to be able to conduct those evaluations. We handle what are called shuttle negotiations. Sometimes the tenant and landlord are not speaking to one another, but we intervene to exchange messages. And we can have also a structured mediation. Everything, by the way, at this time is handled on Zoom or as a teleconferencing moment. As I mentioned earlier, we also have a 2-hour free legal consultation that relates to BASIF's Lawyer Referral and Information Service, which is also one of the public service programs I oversee. And so we have a seamless pathway for folks who come in, commercial tenants in particular, that need that legal advice or run through with their lease, maybe have questions on changing terms or an interim lease, and we patch that legal consultation inside the dispute resolution continuum where we work to get a resolution. Next, and then we also, I should say quickly, we make a lot of other referrals for folks, not only to OEWD, but to other kinds of resources in the city that might help support them and whatever else is presenting in their situation. Next slide. So one of the key features of our program is that we operate on a crisis intervention model, which is that we respond to all help requests within 24 hours, 7 days a week throughout the entire year, holidays included, and so on. And part of that is because we're very committed to de-escalating where the tension is. And of course, anxiety levels are beyond the norm at this point, and even more so, therefore, I have to say, pride ourselves on being able to conduct that quick response to a request for assistance, to give that the attention it needs, the situation may need. And often we're calling folks back within hours, if not even less than that, when the first help request comes in. We take calls and messages, and we also take email requests for help. Next slide. So just a quick overview of the background of the professional neutrals that are at the ready assisting. We have a core team on staff that's assisting with commercial landlord-tenant dispute resolution. At the same time, we rely on a team of professional neutrals that are independent from us, but bring to the fore, along with our staff, an interdisciplinary background in commercial leasing, asset management, corporate structures around tenant leasing. And so we have not only the dispute resolution expertise, but also the grounding in what commercial business is about and the leasing around space. We also want to put forward that, in fact, this program is really committed to trying to figure out long-lasting solutions, not only in a crisis for what's going to work now, but hopefully over time, what will work more long-term to keep that business stably sited. And with that, try to figure through what solutions work for everyone, because when that happens, that's the long-lasting solution. Next slide. Here we want to really advance the notion that before an adversarial process takes place, and we hope before an eviction takes place, that we will learn of what conflict exists and be able to intervene as early as possible. We do provide what kind of orientation, again, through some legal help, advocacy, and otherwise a continuum of approaches to try to get dialogue started and resolution to happen and avoid going to court altogether. The real benefit underlying this is that, as my colleague Roger likes to say, the landlord-tenant relationship is one, and restoring that relationship, keeping it as healthy as possible, making it a bit more collaborative, getting that dialogue to happen. At the end of the day, again, that's what's going to lead to long-lasting stability for a business. And for a landlord too, who's very interested, by the way, not only is very interested in keeping a tenant if they can. There are a lot of lost economic values that set up when a place goes vacant. So there is motivation on the landlord side. Sometimes there's stubbornness, however, on both the commercial tenant and the landlord side. We've seen, I want to say almost we've seen it all, but we have ways that we intervene to sort of soften and get through impasse. And again, finding solutions that are win-win for both with creative thinking, thought partnership around how to structure conversations. Now that's where we really want to end up, again, for longer lasting solutions. Next slide. So since we've been operating in the commercial space, managing conflict, it's resulted in about a 72% positive settlement outcome. We're very excited about that result. That means that we're able to get people to convene conversations and to get to a place where they find that win-win. Most of the agreements so far have included substantial rent reductions and a repayment plan around that, and or an interim lease that will take place while the business comes into recovery and the back rent is paid out. Many tenants also have, we have concrete examples of commercial tenants so overwhelmed that they had really no other notion except maybe more fear than notions that they could sustain their business. And we, with our business analysis and acumen and looking at the total situation, we've been able to get some of the tenants, many of the tenants, to reverse their action on closing their business. So again, we feel that that's also very much a win, because our goal is to keep business in San Francisco and keep it stable economically. Next slide. Yeah, so this is our contact information. I'd like to just say again that there really is, I'd like to say, first of all, because of the generous funding through the City and County of San Francisco, OEWD, these services are free. And there is no downside to calling us. The adversarial avenues are always available to you. This process interrupts nothing around that. And we feel and have results that speak to when early intervention can happen in conflict. Generally speaking, that result is going to be a positive outcome. I'd like to invite my colleague Roger Moss to comment just a bit about some of the cases that we have seen, maybe an example or two, just to give you, again, some texture and flavor for how it is that we intervene in conflict and manage those resolutions.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you everyone for being here. We're very grateful to be participating today. And just a few thoughts to give you a little more about who we are and how we operate. We're very explicit that we are a compassion-centered program, and we're here first. And this is why we get back to people often, usually within minutes of that first help request coming in. Because people who are calling us, whether they're commercial tenants or landlords, they're all stressed. Many are frightened. Many have not talked to the other side for months and months, which always makes things harder and increases the fear level. So really giving people a chance to know that there's someone who cares and will respond quickly and meet them where they are, that's all crucial to what we do. And our compassion is surrounded with a huge amount of professional expertise and skills, and across our team of many people, hundreds of years of experience navigating commercial leasing conflict in San Francisco and other places. A few things to think about. What's a little different on the commercial program than on our residential program, where people are very eager to have us call their landlord or call their tenant and say, we're not for or against anyone, but we're here to help you create a win-win solution for your problem, whatever that is. There's been a little bit more reluctance for the people who call us for help to have us reach out to the other side. They don't really understand. They think they might, particularly tenants, we might aggravate the landlord by calling them. And I just would tell people that don't be afraid of that. We show up in this very soft, loving way for everybody, even when there's evidence of people not behaving well or treating each other with courtesy. We show up fresh, and we make it clear that we're neutral. And what that means is what I said a moment ago: we're not for or against anybody, but we want a good result. We want to, if possible, keep a business open, especially the small businesses in the spaces that they occupy. We understand landlords need to cover their expenses. So the whole point of using us is that because we're neutral and because we're a fresh face, people are just more apt. It's like an icebreaker. People are more apt to respond, and after they check us out and maybe get a few calls or have a few conversations, some very meaningful things can happen. The other thing, there's been a kind of a tremor in the force since September 30th. People are getting nervous. Some landlords are beginning to put notices on people's doors. There's talk about eviction. So this is not the time to freeze up, but it's time to reach out and get some help. A lot of people have just been stuck or in deep denial. We haven't said this yet today, but all of us are operating under a level of trauma because of everything that's happened the last few years. That's a very real thing, and it's across the board. It affects everybody, whether we realize it or not. And so it's normal to kind of go into hiding. It's flee or fight, but most often in these situations it's freeze. People freeze up, and so that is particularly dangerous for a tenant who hasn't been paying their rent, hasn't been in communication with their landlord. Now that the moratorium is expired, it's essential that you reach out, and we're here to do that for you. The other thing that we've seen is, once we engage with the parties and people are actively buying into a process and accepting the help to find business solutions, and everything we do is grounded in deep situational analysis from a business perspective, much more than a legal perspective. Ultimately, things have to work for tenant and landlord on a business level, so that's always operating. But whereas a lot of time was spent before September 30th kicking ideas around, there was no pressure on paying any rent today before September 30th, although many tenants continued to pay rent even when they couldn't afford it. And they have kept in particularly good graces with their landlords by showing that good faith. Now is not the time to over-negotiate. Now is the time, if you're a tenant and you're still there and you haven't paid rent in a while, find a way to send some money to your landlord as a signal. Well, the landlords who haven't known what to do, and smaller landlords, they may own a lot of real estate, they may not be terribly sophisticated. They don't know there's something between talking to people and eviction. They're very quick to go into that eviction mode of thinking. And we say to them, hang on, if you haven't had a conversation, if you haven't made any proposals to your tenant, if you haven't indicated you want them to stay, be methodical, have some thought around those things before you act. So that's where we are today, and we look forward to being of service to anybody who needs it. If you're in doubt about whether or not to call us, that's the time to call us. And I'll stop there and see if there are any other questions, or Carol, if you have additional things that we've missed.
Well, one last thing I'll say to those who view this is that we also offer assistance in Spanish and Cantonese on staff, and then we have available as well language interpreters should there be that need. Again, also funded through the program. So I wanted to put that message clear that we have been also assisting some multilingual, multicultural business owners in San Francisco. And I think we are also available for any other kinds of questions. Manish, I'm not sure if we have any questions available yet, but
I just want to chime in on the language piece. This is hugely important, and we have tremendous language facility, including beyond the 3 dominant languages. The other day we had a three language mediation, and it was Cantonese, Spanish, and English. The different parties. There was a master tenant involved, and an owner and a tenant, and no one spoke each other's language. And we didn't bring in interpreters. We had mediators that are fluent in those languages and got it done. It was pretty amazing.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Roger. That's pretty incredible. And thank you so much to Carol and Roger both for the informative presentation on this really vital topic. It's very reassuring for our audience, I'm sure, to know that your service is out there. We're going to jump into a quick round of Q&A now. I'll be moderating that for you guys. We have a few questions that have come in from our audience, and actually it's a perfect segue. The one at the top of my list was around whether or not the Bar Association is offering these services in languages other than English. So it's a good kickoff to our Q&A session. A reminder for everyone who's listening in today in our audience, we're here for your questions. Make sure to email them over to cityadmin.events@sfgov.org. And with that, we're going to just jump right into the first question on the list here. So this question is actually for the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, the previous presenter. Besides the storefront vandalism relief grant, are there other grants currently open for small businesses recovering from the economic effects of COVID?
Hi, thank you, Nicole. I'll be happy to take that question. So as of now, not grant, but the other program that we do have available in terms of resources is our 0% interest loan through the California Rebuilding Loan Fund that we partnered up with. And so I think I sent the link up directly for those that are interested. They can fill out an interest form. Those loans are up to $100,000, again at a 0% interest, and those funds can be used towards operations or also paying off higher interest debt. So I would definitely encourage those that are interested to look into that loan. The other one that is not a city grant but is currently available is the Salesforce Small Business Grant. I understand that the deadline for that is October 17th, so there's still time to apply. That's for businesses that have between 2 and 50 employees. And that's another link that I did share with the moderator. Hopefully they can post it and share it.
All right, thanks so much, Diana, and we'll be putting those links up into the chat in YouTube for everyone with us today. Now I have a series of questions coming in for the Bar Association, kind of practical questions about accessing your service, just learning more about it. So the first one is just wondering, how has the volume of caseloads has been since the end of the commercial eviction moratorium?
It's increasing. I'm going to probably toss this one over to Roger, who's really on the front lines. But it's interesting to us because in some ways, the eviction moratorium is lifted. However, as Manish pointed out, the repayment periods carry forward from the ordinance. And so in some ways, we're doing very much a similar activity, trying to get those, what negotiated reductions may be possible, get repayment plans lined up and agreed to. But I think there's definitely a fever taking over now in regards to the fact that businesses are really understanding they could potentially be evicted. Roger, do you want to comment a bit further?
Sure. What I'd like to emphasize is we do a lot of small things quickly. The way most of these cases go, people show up with some questions, some basic questions. They may not be ready, or they're not sure whether they need to engage in a big process. They're thinking often that there is some sort of large structured process, a big time suck, and sometimes there is. But most of the time, people need 15 or 20 minutes of being listened to and then get some feedback on what to do next. I got this notice from my landlord. We've always had a good relationship, and we ask certain follow-up questions, and then we make suggestions on how to respond. We really, much of what we do is kind of a conflict coaching model that's specific to how to communicate inside of the landlord-tenant relationship. Almost nobody knows how to do that unless they've been taught to do it. So that's a big part of what we do. We are getting increasing cases, and we are working longer hours, but we're covering the inbound requests, so don't be concerned. And we've never failed to respond to people in that 24-hour window, and it's usually same day, even on the weekends. So that's all I have on that, Carol.
Thank you both for all of your hard work. That 24-hour window is pretty incredible that you're able to maintain that right now. Another quick question on your services. A listener asks, after the 2 hours of free legal consultation is exhausted, will you charge for your services?
Oh, thank you for that question. So what happens from there, if someone in fact needs either what we call limited scope representation or maybe full scope representation, it could be that the lawyer, through the lawyer referral service that otherwise originally consulted for the 2 hours, may be the same attorney that the business can hire to go forward, or it could be a different attorney referred to the client or the commercial tenant through the lawyer referral service. So yes, there are charges for representation beyond the first 2 hour free consult. And generally the lawyers are working with small business to try to price those services so that it's affordable. Sometimes payment plans can be made, sometimes other kinds of arrangements, but yes, the attorneys do charge for their representation services beyond the 2 hours.
Let me add something there and a clarification. So the legal consultation is an adjunct to our main program. And what I do and what the CIS team does is provide continuous services as professional neutrals until we get a result or people no longer want to proceed. And there's no limit on that. We don't ever start charging you for what we do. And this gives me an opportunity to give you a brief example. Manish asked for one about, what some of these cases look like, and also how the legal piece fits in. There was a restaurant tenant that came to us. This was several months ago. They thought they wanted to cancel their right to cancel the lease under the moratorium Tier 1 provision. They owed quite a bit of back rent, about $90,000. And unlike most situations that we deal with, they had a big shopping center industry professional landlord, and they have a very particular mindset in dealing with these situations. They were from out of the area, and their legal counsel was somewhere else. And so when we intervened, and this is a case where a landlord had a lawyer who was thrilled that somebody understood, first of all, how shopping center developers work and how to try to negotiate an interim rental agreement in a retail context, which is you have a lot more to work with retail, especially if people are operating at all. And this restaurant was doing takeout service when they contacted us. But the long-term strategy, because the business wasn't really working before COVID started. And so that was an indicator that they probably were going to have to close, which they ultimately did. The landlord was going to challenge the city's ordinance and didn't think the city had the right to, grant that cancellation provision. So there was a conversation there. And ultimately, we convinced both the landlord and the tenant that rather than get involved with litigation, let's do a settlement that it includes an early lease termination. The tenant paid a little bit more of the future rent than they had to under the ordinance, just a month or two, but they also got a discount on the retroactive rent that they owed, for which the ordinance does not guarantee that. And then at some point, an attorney was brought in to do the document negotiation and review of the the termination agreement, which was a separate negotiation from what we did on the business deal side. So, and we worked on that case. I was very involved with that one for 5 months. And I think the attorney, who did do more than 2 hours of work, only billed another 3 hours beyond the free time. So it was incredibly affordable from the tenant's perspective. They got out cleanly. The landlord made a deal that they could sell to their committee and their investors to write off some of the rent that they saw as being owed to them, regardless of the law. Everybody went away happy, and it was done. And sadly, in that case, we lost a business in San Francisco, but I heard that they have already got the space reoccupied with somebody else, which is a point I want to make here. Depending on what market segment you operate in, unfortunately for tenants, rents are coming back faster than many of us expected in San Francisco. Now, it's different on neighborhood by neighborhood. It's different for office use versus retail versus industrial versus other things. But the historic capacity or resilience of the real estate market in San Francisco seems to be still in evidence, which merely means, as I said before, it's time to really start talking and try to make a deal as quickly as possible and show good faith, and not to stall, not to freeze up, because that is the worst thing a business owner can do right now, is not be communicating with your landlord or your tenant.
Thank you for sharing that, Roger. We appreciate you kind of coloring the support that you're providing to small businesses. And I have another question here that's a little bit of a twist, not talking necessarily about commercial evictions, but also speaking to your comments on the real estate market coming back for the commercial sector. So this is coming from Awa, who is a new business owner, and she's wondering, within your services, do you help new small businesses with the first time commercial lease negotiation?
You mean when you're doing a new deal with a landlord right now?
I'm interpreting as starting a new lease.
Yeah, we have talked about offering those services we certainly have the capacity to do that. I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense. Here's what we can do. Call us up and we can make suggestions. I often ask people, successful business owners who've had a business for 30 years in San Francisco, they always made a deal with their landlord, but now there's a new landlord. It's a big corporation, and we had the pandemic, and they don't know what to do. And I say, well, do you have a commercial broker? Go get a commercial broker and do a market survey. Get some expertise around what rents are, what they should be. Then we can help you figure out whether your business can pay for that. Then we explain to people that once a business deal is done, you need professional help with the business deal piece. Then you need often separate professional help on the document negotiation. And through the Bar Association of San Francisco, you can get experts, and they're doing things affordably for small businesses. But right now, our program, that's just not our business to help brand new people opening up new businesses. We'd love to do that, but right now we've got our hands full. Carol, would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think it isn't to say that at some point the scope of our services may expand to new business. We have a priority and a mandate under our funding to be able to assist those businesses that are vulnerable and need assistance to stay in business, and potentially renegotiate their leases. So that is our priority at the moment.
Yeah, and I would add a couple of things. One of the biggest values of calling us and getting help and getting an introduction to our services is we try to teach people best practices that they can use for the future. We try to shape people's thinking, get them to be aware of certain things. And one of the biggest negative impacts on small businesses is not investing in the proper help to make business deals for their business, and then for that critical lease negotiation. It's shocking to me, and I've seen this for 35 years now. People just don't know what they're signing, and there's no protections for commercial leases, generally speaking, like there are for residential leases. It's what the parties agree to. So if you don't understand what you're agreeing to, and there's some of these commercial leases are 60 pages long, you really need, there's only a small number of things that can really be a business killer if you don't know what they are. And so having someone, it's not that expensive to get the right expert to identify those things so you understand them, maybe negotiate some changes to these leases. So don't go alone if you're a commercial business owner. Even if you're a very sophisticated business person and making a lot of money doing whatever you do, if you don't have the expertise in commercial leasing, please get some help. It can save you from a catastrophic loss. For example, there are some businesses that had sophisticated legal counsel before COVID who were negotiating the force majeure provision, it's called, in leases, which included language which would have allowed them to cancel their lease under COVID. But most leases didn't have language like that. So that's an example where having the expertise allowed some people to completely evade the catastrophic consequences of COVID if they wanted to make the decision to close and move out. So get help.
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate that perspective. And then for Awa and others who are looking to reach out to any of our speakers after this, just a reminder that we'll be sharing the presentation, so you'll have their contact information. A couple more questions. I know we're running close to time here, but just two more questions for OEWD before we wrap. This one also from Awa, from the new business perspective regarding the COVID relief programs that you spoke of. She reflects that it seems that these programs are for people that have been in business for a while during COVID. And so she has a question if people would be eligible if they have been in business for less than a year.
So thank you for that question. So actually, as we have been rolling out new programs, we have learned, and also with every program that we roll out, we look at where the need is. And yes, some of these resources are available for business, for those that have been in business for less than a year. I can't remember in particular the one. Yes, I believe also even the 0% loan is available. The thing that I did want to also mention, that right now, the way our funds have been coming is we roll out on an ongoing basis throughout the year new programs and new services and resources based on how we get them and how they become available. So even though right now we may only have the vandalism program open to those that have been impacted by vandalism and the 0% interest loan, that does not mean that that's all we will have for the year. We are actually right now programming, and one of the areas that we do want to focus on, because we have also seen an interest in, is new businesses trying to launch in the city of San Francisco. So those will be new upcoming programs in the new calendar year. So I encourage you again to please just keep resorting through our website, sign up for that newsletter, because as we program those out at the beginning of the year, we'll be, making those available. So I encourage everyone to sign up for our newsletter and just keep looking back at our website. Don't get discouraged if, one resource closes, because we have been opening throughout the year, again, as resources become available.
Thanks, Deanna. And just the last question is around the employee retention tax credit, where to find more information on that. Sounds like your website is a good place to go.
Yeah, I think Manish can speak on that, right? And I think a link was going to be provided specifically linking to that page.
Thank you for that question. And thank you, Deanna and Nicole. Yeah, definitely go visit our page. There's a list of information that I think will be really useful for businesses. One thing that we mentioned on our website is take a look at it, but really you should also consult with your CPA. I think it's one of those programs that you'll have to kind of really understand it with a qualified CPA. It's a little above my understanding, but definitely we will provide. I believe we did provide a link to the city administrator's office to provide to the audience.
Perfect. Thank you, Manish. And that link will go up in the YouTube comments if it hasn't already. So with that, thanks to all of our speakers for this session, really, to Deanna, Manish, Carol, and Roger. We really appreciate your participation and your expertise on these important topics at this critical time for our small business community. And then most importantly, thank you for sharing where folks can go to get additional guidance, assistance, and resources to support their recovery.